They called her the beast in the sack, but the giant cowboy found his heart inside it. The dust on the main street of Sunset Ridge, Texas, still carried the heat of the day, even though the sun had bled out behind the mesas. Hoofbeats clopped slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat counting down to trouble. The saloon doors creaked open and every head inside turned, then pretended not to. He filled the doorway the way a storm cloud fills the sky. Roy the Beast McLean, 6'7" in his boots, shoulders so wide the barkeep swore he'd have to widen the frame again. His Stetson shadowed a face carved from granite and old regrets. A scar ran from the corner of his left eye to the edge of his jaw, souvenir from a Comanche lance, or so the stories went. No one asked him direct. No one dared. Roy stepped inside. The floorboards groaned. Conversation died like a candle in wind. At the faro table, a drunk cattleman muttered loud enough for the room. "There's the beast in the sack. Wonder who he'll break tonight." Laughter rippled, nervous and thin. Roy didn't flinch. He crossed the room in 4 long strides, boots thudding like war drums, and dropped a silver dollar on the bar. "Whiskey. Leave the bottle." The bartender, a wiry man named Pike with a missing front tooth, obeyed without a word. The bottle slid across scarred oak. Roy's hand, big enough to palm a steer's skull, closed around it. He poured, drank, poured again. The amber liquid disappeared like rain in desert sand. Behind him, the batwing doors swung once more. This time, the room went quieter than a graveyard at midnight. She walked in. Lila, the sack Delgado. 5'0" in her dusty boots, but the space she took up was bigger than any man in the room. Black hair braided tight, the tail brushing the curve of her back. Skin sun-kissed bronze, eyes the color of storm clouds before lightning. A faded red bandana knotted at her throat, leather vest, denim shirt rolled to the elbows, twin Colt revolvers riding low on hips that had broken more hearts than promises. They called her the sack, because once she had you in her sights, you were done, bagged, tagged, and buried before the echo faded. Some said she'd outdrawn Billy Thorne in Abilene. Others swore she'd kissed a federale in Juarez and left him smiling in a pool of his own blood. Truth was, nobody knew the whole story. Nobody wanted to. Lila's gaze swept the saloon and landed on Roy. A slow smile curved her mouth. Equal parts honey and rattlesnake venom. "Evening." "Beast," she said, voice low, smoky, carrying the faint lilt of border Spanish. "Heard you were looking for a game." Roy turned. The bottle paused halfway to his lips. "I play cards," he rumbled. "I don't play games." Lila laughed, short, sharp, like a whip crack. She sauntered to the poker table in the corner where 5 men already sat, sweating despite the evening chill. One of them, a gambler in a brocade vest, started to rise. "Sit," Lila said. The single word pinned him like a butterfly to cork. She pulled out the empty chair, spun it, straddled it backward. Her fingers drummed the felt. 5-card draw. "Table stakes. I'm feeling generous." The men exchanged glances. Nobody folded. Pride was thicker than caution in Sunset Ridge. Roy watched from the bar. Something stirred behind his ribs, curiosity maybe, or the ghost of something he'd buried 6 feet under with every man he'd killed. The cards whispered across the green felt. Lila cut the deck with one hand, riffled it perfect. The gambler in brocade, name was Silas Creed, dealt. Lila peeked at her hole cards and didn't blink. She tossed in a $10 gold piece. The others followed like sheep. Roy leaned against the bar, arms folded, a mountain observing an anthill. First draw. Lila discarded 3, took 3. Her face stayed stone. Creed bet heavy, 200. A rancher named Hobbs folded. The blacksmith, a Swede called Olson, called. The last man, a skinny kid with a deputy badge, threw in his chips with shaking fingers. Showdown. Creed laid down a full house, queens over 7s, grinned like a wolf over a carcass. Lila turned her cards slow. Or deuces. Black as sin. The table erupted. Creed's grin shattered. Lila raked in the pot with both hands, coins clinking like bones in a sack. She looked straight at Roy. "Your move, cowboy." Roy pushed off the bar. The room parted like the Red Sea. He pulled out the chair opposite Lila, sat. The table creaked under his weight. "Deal," he said. Silas Creed's hands trembled as he shuffled. The deck blurred. He offered the cut to Lila. She tapped it. No cut. Creed dealt. Roy lifted his cards with 2 fingers, expression unreadable. Lila studied him the way a cougar studies a deer, patient, hungry, certain. Betting began. Lila opened with 50. Roy called without looking again. Creed folded fast. Olson muttered and mucked. The deputy kid went all in. $32 and a pocket watch. Lila matched it. Roy tossed in 100 like it was pocket lint. 3 players left. Draw. Lila stood pat. The kid took one. Roy discarded one, took one. Final bet. Lila pushed forward every chip in front of her, close to 2,000 now. The kid whimpered and folded. Roy stared at her across the felt. Seconds stretched like taut rope. He matched her bet and raised 500. Lila's eyes narrowed. The room held its breath. Call, she said. Roy laid down his cards. Ace high straight, clean, unbeatable. Except Lila turned over a flush, spades king high. The saloon exploded. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted. Pike the bartender started pouring free shots just to keep the peace. Lila stood, scooped the mountain of cash and gold into a burlap sack she produced from her belt. She tied it with a rawhide string, slung it over her shoulder. Pleasure, beast. She tipped an imaginary hat. Next time, bring more than luck. Roy watched her walk out, hips swaying like a metronome counting down to judgment. The sack of winnings bounced against her back, thump, thump, thump. He drained the last of the whiskey. It burned less than the look she'd given him. Roy rode out before sunrise, leading a pack mule loaded with supplies. Word was a herd of wild mustangs ran the high plains north of the Pecos. Prime horseflesh for the army contract. Enough money to buy a ranch, maybe even a new start. He aimed to catch them, break them, sell them. He didn't expect company. 10 miles out, a dust cloud on the horizon resolved into a single rider. Lila. Same red bandana, same sway in the saddle. She rode a rangy paint mare that looked half wild itself. Morning beast, she called, reining in beside him. Heard you're hunting ponies, Roy grunted. Heard you're hunting trouble, she laughed. One keeps me fed, the other keeps me warm. They rode in silence for a spell. The sun climbed, turning the grasslands gold. Lila pulled a strip of jerky from her saddlebag, tore it in half, offered him a piece. He took it. Why follow me? He asked. Who says I'm following? Maybe our trails just cross. Roy glanced at the burlap sack tied behind her saddle. Same one from the poker game, heavier now. That sack's got a powerful pull. Lila's smile was sharp. Some men chase gold, some chase legends. I chase both. They made camp that night beside a dry wash. Roy built a fire with mesquite. Lila produced a tin of beans and a bottle of mezcal. They ate in silence, flames crackling between them. After a while, Lila spoke. You ever think the name they gave you fits too well? Roy poked the fire. Sparks rose like fireflies. Names are brands. Burn deep. And mine? He met her eyes. You earned yours same as me. She leaned closer. Firelight painted gold on her cheekbones. Ever wonder what's underneath the brand? Roy didn't answer. But he didn't look away either. 3 days later, they found the mustangs. 200 head grazing a hidden valley. Roy's plan was simple. Drive them into a box canyon, rope the leaders, break the rest slow. Nature had other plans. A mountain lion spooked the herd at dawn. Hooves thundered like Judgment Day. Roy and Lila raced to head them off. But the canyon mouth was too narrow. The lead stallion, a massive black brute with a white blaze, charged straight at them. Roy's horse reared. He hit the ground hard, rolled, came up with his lariat spinning. Lila was already moving. Paint mare leaping boulders like they were pebbles. She fired 2 shots in the air, crack, crack. The herd veered, but not enough. The black stallion bore down on Roy. He planted his feet, rope whistling. The loop settled perfect over the beast's neck. Roy dug in his heels, muscles straining. The rope sang. The stallion dragged him 10 yards before momentum shifted. Lila galloped alongside, leaned low, grabbed the rope with both hands. Together they hauled the stallion to a stop. The herd milled, confused, then funneled into the canyon like God himself had planned it. Dust settled. Roy's hands bled where the rope had burned through his gloves. Lila slid from her saddle, breathing hard. You all right? She asked. He looked at her, really looked. Sweat streaked her face. The cut above her eyebrow leaked red. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Never better, he said. That night, they picketed the stallion apart from the herd. Roy worked him gentle, voice low, hand steady. Lila watched from the fire. You got a gift, she said. Gift is a strong word. No, it's exactly the word. She stood, walked to him. Beast in the sack, they say. But I see a man who knows how to hold something wild without breaking it. Roy's throat went dry. Careful, Lila, some things break easy. She stepped closer. Some things are stronger than they look. The kiss came sudden. Her hands on his chest, his arms around her waist like they'd done this 1,000 times. The fire popped. Somewhere the stallion nickered. The world narrowed to heat and heartbeat. Weeks turned to months. The herd grew. Roy built a corral of cedar posts. Lila taught him Spanish curses and how to roll cigarettes one-handed. They slept under the same blanket, woke to the same sunrise. Word travels fast on the plains. By the time Roy and Lila had 20 horses broken and branded, 3 hard cases rode into camp, rifles across their saddles, greed in their eyes. The leader was a scar-faced man called Breedlove. He'd killed a marshal in Dodge and wore the badge on his hat like a trophy. Afternoon, Breedlove said, spitting tobacco. Heard you got army horses. We'll take 'em off your hands. Save you the ride. Roy stood slow, hand near his Colt. Lila was already in the shadows, silent as smoke. Ride on, Roy said. Breedlove grinned. 3 guns, cowboy. You do math? Lila's voice drifted from behind them. He does. But I'm partial to subtraction. 3 rifles swung. Too late. Lila's Colts barked twice. Breedlove's companions dropped. One with a hole in the forehead, the other clutching a shattered knee. Breedlove dove for cover, firing wild. Roy's bullet took him through the shoulder, spun him like a top. Silence fell, broken only by the wounded man's whimpers. Lila holstered her guns. Anyone else want to discuss arithmetic? They tied the survivors across their saddles and sent them back to Sunset Ridge with a message. The beast and the sack are partners now. Cross them, you cross lightning. One night, storm clouds stacked like bruises on the horizon. Thunder rolled. Lila sat by the fire, burlap sack in her lap. The same one from the poker game, now patched and soft with use. Roy watched her. What's really in there, Lila? She untied the string, reached inside, pulled out a small leather pouch, opened it. Inside lay a single gold coin, worn smooth, edges nicked. On one side, a woman's profile. On the other, a heart pierced by an arrow. My mother's, Lila said. Only thing she left me before the fever took her. Said it was luck, said it was love. I never knew which. Roy took the coin, turned it over in his huge palm. Reckon it's both. Lila looked at him, eyes soft for the first time. I was running, Roy, from the name, from the bodies, from everything. Thought if I kept moving, the past couldn't catch me. He set the coin back in her hand, closed her fingers over it. Past always catches up. Question is what you do when it does. She leaned into him. I'm done running. Lightning cracked. Rain came down in sheets. They huddled under the tarp, bodies pressed close, the sack between them like a promise. Word reached Fort Concho. The army needed horses yesterday. Price tripled. Roy and Lila drove the herd south, 200 head strong and sound. They made the fort in 9 days, half dead from dust and saddle sores. The colonel counted the stock, nodded approval. Finest remounts I've seen. You'll be paid in gold. That night, in the officers' mess, Roy and Lila sat at a real table with linen and china. The colonel raised a glass. To the beast and the sack, partners in every sense. Lila lifted her glass, eyes on Roy. To the man who found my heart in the sack. Roy's voice was gruff. And to the woman who tamed the beast. Outside, the herd nickered under a full moon. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang. Roy slipped his hand into Lila's. The gold coin pressed warm between their palms. They rode out at dawn, rich, alive and no longer running. The sack hung from Lila's saddle. Light now, but heavier than gold. Inside, 1 coin, 2 hearts, and a future wide as the Texas sky.